It's 9:32. I will call this meeting to order. Start the recording, please. Okay. Per Illinois Public Act 1010640, this meeting is being held by remote attendance. Thanks for that, everybody. I know we had said that we were going to do this in person, but then I started working with my staff on, restricting program attendance and limiting meetings, and it just, the optics of me hosting a meeting while I was telling them not to, felt awkward. So I appreciate everyone being willing to do this online. It's probably the safest thing for right now anyway. Okay, so can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Blazik?
Present.
Bo Davis?
Here.
Bussey?
Here.
Cottrell?
Here.
Gallardo is absent. Jarzemski?
Here.
Jenkins?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any visitors on the call?
Aaron Skog, SWAN, Executive Director.
Ginny Blake, Business Manager for SWAN.
Dawn Tortorella, Assistant Director, SWAN.
Great, thanks. Any public comment? There being none, let's move to the action item to accept the September 17th SWAN Board meeting agenda. A motion, please.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay. We have to do a roll call, right? Okay. Roll call, please.
Yes. Blazik?
Yes.
Bo Davis?
Yes.
Bussey?
Yes.
Cottrell?
Yes.
Gallardo absent. Jarzemski?
Yes.
Jenkins?
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, so we have two action items in a row. Let's motion and second on each one, and then if there are any financial questions, we can ask them all together after the second roll, or before the second roll call. So, a motion to approve the SWAN financials for July,
So moved.
and a second,
Second.
and then a motion to remove this, to approve the SWAN financials for August,
So moved.
and a second.
Second.
Any questions or discussion?
I did have a question. In July, there were several voided checks. Could someone just explain what happened there?
Ginny, is this related to the software issues that we had with
It
the
is.
accounting system?
Correct. Yes, it is.
So without detailing this blow by blow, we have been working with Lauterbach in their hosted accounting system, and there's been a lot of troubleshooting going back and forth. And one of the things that occurred is that we have had some issues generating invoices as a PDF. And then also Ginny was working on the check run, and then we inadvertently found out that there was checks that were run with duplicate numbers. Is that correct? Ginny and Dawn, am I stating that correctly?
Yes.
So we had to end up voiding those, but they're appearing on the register. I regret I didn't note that in my write-up on the financials, but that's what happened. And then you also had one other question, Dawn. I know you emailed us that last night, and so I appreciate that, having a chance to kind of think that over.
No worries. The other piece of the question was, and it's probably the same issue, but there were some what are listed on the payables as overpayments. One example would be the server software licensing at $5,714.72.
Actually, I think that could be the, if that's not, is that the credit card for Stephen?
It was, yes.
Okay.
Credit card payment.
Okay, so and that's on our agenda for today too. We reached that, almost to that limit. So we decided, I had asked Aaron to go ahead and make a payment before our automatic payments came out.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
With our much of our IT infrastructure now having moved over to the cloud, a lot of that is now transactional sort of rental space that we subscribe to, and is paid on our credit card. So what we're seeing more and more is our credit card charges as we've kind of grown and expanded our infrastructure, meaning that we've taken physical servers that were living in the Rails data center and they're now in our own infrastructure space, such as the SWAN web support website, our other systems that we have for ticketing, and then fairly recently, I should say fairly recently, I want to say it's probably been about 2 months now, we've had our Aspen server. Now we have a test system that gets releases deployed to them, and then we have the production, which is live. So we've in effect doubled the space for Aspen. Dawn already alerted me, just based on where we're headed, and it's just going to be one of those years where we're trying to find the right balance with what we budgeted and the server performance. I'm erring more on that. We want the server performance to be, like top notch. So we might go over in that line. We'll be monitoring it.
Any other questions or discussion of the financials? All right, Ginny, we're going to do 2 roll calls, one right after another. The first one will be for July, and the second one will be for August. So let's do July.
Okay, July. Blazik,
Yes.
O'Davis,
Yes.
Bussey,
Yes.
Cottrell,
Yes.
Gallardo absent, Jarzemski,
Yes.
Jenkins.
Yes.
Thank you. And let's do one more for August.
For August. Okay, Blazik,
Yes.
O'Davis,
Yes.
Bussey,
Yes.
Cottrell,
Yes.
Gallardo absent, Jarzemski,
Yes.
Jenkins.
Yes.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. Next up, we have an action item to accept the July 23rd SWAN board meeting minutes. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Great. Any questions or modifications of those minutes? I thought they looked pretty good. All right. Can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Blazik,
Yes.
O'Davis,
Yes.
Bussey,
Yes.
Cottrell,
Yes.
Gallardo absent, Jarzemski,
Yes.
Jenkins.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next, we're going to take a look at the holiday policy. Before we motion and all of that, I'll have Aaron tell us a little bit about these changes. Aaron, Jennifer, and I have been talking about some of these already, but some of the rest of you may have questions. So, Aaron, you can take that away.
Sure. This was an interesting year for the way the policy was worded, and then with the days that were set for staff to take off. There was some questions that arose because I think staff are starting to look ahead and plan for time off, and we like to coordinate everything to make sure that we have sufficient support during the holiday period, because it can be busy actually essentially at SWAN during this time. So we want to make sure that we have staff sufficiently scheduled. And one of the things that we noted was the policy as written was essentially moving a holiday that was falling on a Saturday or Friday. And I alerted staff. I was like, well, this policy is hitting in 2021 and creating this strange effect where we're kind of losing a day. Of course, naturally, some staff were kind of upset about this, and I said, fear not, we're going to go to the board and talk about this. So when I approached Ted and Jennifer, it was more to ask, do we want to have the personnel committee look at it? Do we want to bring it to the full board? And their recommendation was, let's bring it to the full board and have a discussion and try to, maybe amend or approve or, get this resolved. So staff feedback was, kind of along the lines of a few different suggested approaches. I think the floating holiday, at least in this circumstance, helps. Wanting to also set that within a window that expires, such as you got to take it within the pay period which occurs. So I hope that makes sense. I did send you all the link to the Juneteenth holiday. I could share my screen if you're interested in seeing how the breakdown occurs for SWAN member libraries, but I have it up for you right now. So it shows right now, at least those that have responded to that poll, 46% of our libraries are open and 29% haven't decided. 8% are closed, and then at least 2 libraries have said they're doing the floating holiday, and then I'll have to follow up with the 2 that are saying that there's a some other approach that they're taking here. So
Erin, do you
on
want to
the
share
whole,
that?
yeah, I think I can share, right?
Yeah.
Here we go. Share. Are you seeing that?
Yeah.
So in the tally that I had was, looking at, I was sorting it by everyone that responded because I intended that poll just to be a benefit for everyone that's a library director trying to see where things are at. So I had to just, note which are the SWAN member libraries and then those that weren't. But it does look like even if you ran this same tally for everyone, we're roughly around 50% of the libraries that have responded are open. Ted, I know you were one of the libraries that said that you would be doing the floating.
Yeah, it's the same thing that we do on Columbus Day and Veterans Day and any library. Any day that there's a holiday that the library is open, staff get a floating holiday.
Same here, and that's why we're doing the same.
Yeah.
So let me ask that: are there any issues with that approach of resolving this Saturday, Friday situation that we have in it? The way the calendar works, I've been told like it's going to happen again in 11 years. So, but we seem to come back to this policy with some regularity as holidays are kind of being tweaked.
Well, just to let you know what we do, if a holiday falls on a weekend like a Saturday or a Sunday, we are not closed the day before or the day after. So Christmas Day falls on a Saturday, we're closed, but we don't get, staff don't have the Friday off. That's how it was done years ago, and I've just kept it the same way. I haven't changed it. But I know a lot of libraries do have that Friday off, so they would be closed Friday and Saturday, and I don't know, maybe even Sunday.
Yeah, we would be we have the exact same holidays that you have listed for SWAN, Erin.
Okay.
And we would and we are closed on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. So, sometimes we do find ourselves with floating, authorizing floating holidays. The only thing I will tell you is that with the Juneteenth, it's no big deal, but there's a lot of people, already taking a lot of time off around the holidays. So sometimes that's the time of year that I get the most requests for, can I do it actually in the next pay period or even in the next? And just be aware that, not everybody wants to use up all of their vacation at the same time. So. But otherwise, I mean, it works. It's worked for us for years.
Are you ready to set Juneteenth as a floating as I put here, or do you want to kind of wait on this? I'm just curious.
What would we be waiting for?
More data.
I think if they get floating holidays for the other days like Martin Luther King and Columbus or whatever, then I think it makes sense to have Juneteenth as a floating. I think it follows your policy, doesn't follow mine. That's why I'm still to be decided one, because we don't have Columbus Day and we don't have President's Day, Martin Luther King. We don't have those days off. So that's why I'm undecided about Juneteenth. If I offer that, will they then ask me, well, why don't we get the other days off? So that's why I'm
Jane, I've just decided we're remaining open and we're treating it the same way as we treat all the other holidays we don't get off. It's just a work day.
I want to do the same, but I don't know, I have to see what the managers say, but they know I'm not a one for closing. I like to be open, so that's what I would hope to do as well, be open. Especially if neighboring libraries are open. Oak Lawn didn't reply, so I'm not sure what they're doing. But Worth is open, you're open. I think Chicago Ridge is open, so.
It's a good day to be open if the schools are off. We do specialized programming along those topics. We are swamped, so it's actually a great day to be open.
Yeah, and I think that's what my board thinks as well. That's a good day to be open, right?
So does anyone not want to move forward with this, or are we ready?
I mean, I think my only concern is there doesn't always have to be equity between SWAN's benefits and the general trend amongst our membership, but I think it's an important element that should be examined when we approve benefits.
Erin, just a question of clarification. It appears that Juneteenth would be the only day that you're not closed, that you're giving a floating holiday for, except for these occasions when the closure dates for other holidays fall on weekends. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Well, we had a similar issue come up where we weren't closing for Martin Luther King Day, and then I was getting questions from staff about why that was, and then brought a policy forward for the board to consider, which was the compromise was like, well, we'll make it an either or for Martin Luther King or President's Day for staff, so it at least allowed a fixed date. You had to either take one or the other, and it again, the goal was like, well, we want to stay open and support the libraries that are open. And a question came up from staff about the election day, and I was like, the majority of our libraries are going to be open that day.
And busy because we're polling places.
But yeah, if you're a polling place, so I was like, I don't see SWAN closing or even honoring this holiday at all for at least that one.
And these are all important days to honor, and I know the state has created a state holiday, but that has absolutely no direct impact on us as units of local government. There's official holidays, there's the banking holidays, there's holidays that are very confusing that have been issued by the state of Illinois. So that can also be added to the discussion.
I think this is very consistent with the way that you're handling Martin Luther King Day and President's Day, so I think it's a good solution. I like it.
Okay.
Am I wrong that Juneteenth is not now a federal holiday? Is that incorrect?
I believe it is.
Yeah, it's not it's not a state holiday. It is now one of the recognized federal holidays. So it's not like Election Day or anything like that. I mean, it's something very, it's a federal holiday.
Yeah, banks are closed, post offices are closed, schools are closed. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's federal.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that it is.
Thanks for pointing it out. I can actually adjust that on the policy if we need to note that.
I mean, because there's lots of state holidays, Casimir Pulaski Day, and all of that we don't react to, but this is something different.
Mm-hmm.
So if we move forward the way this is proposed, it's my understanding we would be saying that Martin Luther King Day, President's Day, and Juneteenth would all be limited floating holidays, whatever that means, because I'm a little confused by what you explained before, Erin.
So Dawn, the SWAN staff can take either Martin Luther King Day or President's Day, but not both. So they get one or the other. So that's a little different. Juneteenth is just a floating holiday for everyone.
In general. Okay.
In general. It's not an either or situation the way that Martin Luther King and President's Day is. That's what we had decided when we reviewed this policy last time. I said that correctly, didn't I?
Yes. As Ted noted, I think the challenge would be folks that don't want to take the holiday within the floating holiday for Juneteenth within that pay period restriction. But we'll go with that. I just wanted to make sure that we could provide coverage because libraries are going to be open and honor the holiday.
Does anyone want to wait and amass more data before approving this? Is there anyone who's not comfortable voting on this today? Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the revised holiday policy?
So moved?
And a second?
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Okay, Blazek,
Yes.
O'Davis,
Yes.
Bussey,
Yes.
Cottrell,
Yes.
Gallardo absent, Jarzemski,
Yes.
Jenkins.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Aaron.
Mhm.
Okay, I don't have a report per se. Thanks to everybody who participated in quarterly. I feel like we had a good quarterly this go around. And that's really all I have to say. So Aaron, I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks, Ted. So the last 2 months have allowed us to sort of really start, stretching out and doing more with the, seek external funding options for SWAN. That was part of our strategic plan. So I believe in the last report I had noted that there was a really good webinar that John Kraska had provided. So I did reach out to John after that webinar, and he did connect with me, and we had a meeting. Dawn Tortorella and I had a meeting, and we spoke about, sort of in general, broadly, as far as what funding options might look like for an organization like SWAN. And I thought it was a very helpful conversation, and he enjoyed it, and also offered to have a follow-up meeting, actually one that may be a little bit longer. We'll get into some of the specifics of what SWAN provides, and he can maybe share some ideas. So I summarized in these bullets here some of what that conversation looked like. I hope it's helpful to kind of look at it, and these were suggestions that were coming from him, and I think it puts a little different spin on maybe how we need to kind of look at SWAN, how we frame what SWAN is doing in terms of this idea of equalization. I thought that was an interesting idea to kind of look at tax equalization arrangements. While I'm not aware if those exist in Illinois, there's certainly states that he cited that we could start to take a look at if it came down to wanting to move forward through ILA, PPC, or something like that. Ideas along these lines. And the federal funding, as far as summary of how he's describing, is coming out of 3 buckets: the federal contract, disaster relief, or competitive grant, which is where I think his overall stance was that libraries have been doing a lot of public libraries have been providing a lot of services that are just sort of part of our just overall mission, and there is generally only one federal funding source that libraries are sort of led to, which is IMLS. But that there's a lot of what public libraries are doing already that potentially you could be looking at as well, maybe we already have the infrastructure or the capacity in place to qualify for some of these other grants. And I think he had said, just as one idea to throw out there, is education on lead poisoning, things like that. So not saying that we're going to become, the lead poisoning, organization for the region, but I think it does show you that, if you think about that, we have easy capacity, if we needed to start, doing more things like providing material or research or information in our suburban area, maybe that would mean that we could qualify for some of these grants with some thinking and further research. So any question about that? I also included the National Endowment for the Arts grant. An excerpt of that is what we applied for, and haven't heard back yet. We should hear by the next meeting.
So are you going to meet with John again?
Yes.
Okay, cool. That's a really good idea, because he knows a ton about, funding stuff that some of us don't always know.
I like the last bullet point about serving as a regional infrastructure to provide public information. Do we overlap or collaborate with Rails in that mission?
It's a great question, and this is where also like some of the ideas that he shared about, equalization, tax equalization schemes, they do run into like, well, then if you have that, what is the mission of a regional library system versus a consortium? I think it's good just to know that there are arrangements out there that if SWAN wanted to like start looking at like, well, if we need to have a direct pipeline of state tax funds, a tax equalization is one way to do it. How you get it done in the state, I don't know. And I know, Tim, you were on the ILA board, and I've been still sitting, even though I ran and didn't get in, I've still been sitting in on the PPC meetings because I feel like that's the group to stay kind of focused on as far as, discussions that are coming up as far as legislation and seeing how that process works. I think it could really help us down the road.
Just in response to Tim's question, it made me think of, when you're talking about regional infrastructure, there are different types of regions. Northern Illinois is one type of region that includes a lot of rural communities, whereas SWAN is a regional infrastructure that's mostly Chicago metro area, well, is all Chicago metro area. So different regions could disperse information differently depending on the type of region.
Any questions about the NEA grant? Fingers crossed that we hear some good news from them. But that was a good effort for me. I know Dawn Tortorella has gone through grants before, but that was helpful to really go through the process of setting up, the grants.gov and all these acronyms that you need for all these other areas of grant applications. So we have all that noted now, and we have all that, saved within our password system as notes. So moving forward should be a lot easier to get a grant out the door because we have all the parts.
Right, and some of the grants lately have been a really short turnaround where if you didn't already have all of that set up, you couldn't hardly pull it off in the amount of time that you've had.
OCLC, of course, I appealed. I told you I would appeal that, and we did get that bill lowered. Not a significant amount, but close to $9,000 is good. And without saying, because I couldn't cite who those 7 individual libraries that were lowered, the one that I expected to be lowered was not, which was Glenside. Glenside has a fairly high OCLC bill, so I think what I'll do is wait, and then next year around this time, appeal again, and maybe we'll see another year and a half's worth of data for Glenside that OCLC might lower that again, or the appeal would be considered and lower Glenside. When we get to the treasurer's report, Dawn Bussey will give an update on the LSAP Sustainability Task Force, and then we do have a consortia committee coming up on the 18th, and then the task force is meeting that same day after the morning meeting. And a couple encouraging things to note here as far as being nominated to the HR Source Board. Very happy to be asked about that. And that meeting is coming up on the 28th. So I already have the agenda for that meeting, and fingers crossed that they vote me in. And the OCLC Global Council is another nomination that I put my name forward on. We'll see how that goes. That's a big election. So I was trying to encourage everyone to register to vote.
I did. I got your email.
Good.
I did.
So did I.
So just to be clear, that do we have to do anything to make sure the ballot comes our way, or will the ballot come our way automatically?
The ballot comes your way, but once I started thinking about the mechanics of it all with OCLC, I followed up with them, and that was where I realized, like, if there's libraries that haven't noted who their voting designee is, they may not get the ballot. So you may get the ballot on Monday, Tim, but if
Okay.
you don't, it may just be one of those things where you're going to have to follow up so to make sure that you get it for next year. So
Yeah. Well, and in Aaron's benefit, it may or may not be appropriate for him to ask formally through any SWAN mechanisms, but it's certainly appropriate for us to ask our SWAN friends to vote for Aaron, because these votes oftentimes come down to 1 or 2 votes. So let's get him in.
thanks. I did use LinkedIn to get the message out rather than using SWAN. I was trying to keep that firewall up of just saying, I'll do this on LinkedIn on my own spare time. So I did get messages out to a lot of you and a lot of other library directors just to make sure they could be registered.
I also sent out some messages. The West Side's got your back, Aaron.
Sounds good. And one idea that I had is was inspired by the trustee event at Batavia Public Library that I had gone to. And whether or not you like the idea or not, I do think that with our new board members joining us and where SWAN is at now, I think we would benefit from having some strategic planning retreat. And I don't mean that as far as like to revise our strategic plan. Certainly we should review the strategic plan, but I was also thinking of how Batavia had people come in and speak for around 15, 20 minutes. I don't know whether or not that you would find that appealing to have some of SWAN's vendors that we have large investments in. I'll just say in terms of how much money we spend with them, maybe we'd want them to come and speak about some of their strategic direction with software we're using now or software we may want to consider in the future, such as WorldShare management through OCLC, to find out more about that. And EBSCO's been a big sponsor of some of these open source solutions, such as Folio, and Folio is making a lot of strides as far as an integrated library system platform. I don't know whether or not it would be something for SWAN ever to consider, but it would be good to see a little bit from EBSCO what they're doing in that sort of sphere of influence, because they are sending money to Evergreen, Koha, and Folio. So I would appreciate any of your sort of feedback as far as the idea of a retreat.
Well,
Ted,
Aaron,
if you're okay with discussing it now.
No, yeah, that'd be great. And I will give feedback that, back when we were doing strategic planning, we did sort of, longer, more intensive board activities. And Aaron, right when I came on the board, we did something that was like an all-day thing, and we had a speaker, and I just remember it being really, really rewarding. And as a brand new board member, I learned, so much in that day that I was able to directly put into action, during my early tenure. So I would be all for it. How does everybody else feel?
I liked the idea as you proposed it. And Ted, are you talking about, would it have been when I sat through when we talked about merging and we had that consultant come in?
Yeah.
No, we did have one with Catherine Dice came in.
Catherine Dice, that's the one I'm
Okay, no, that's not the one I'm thinking of. Okay.
No, there was one specific to the SWAN board where we had Catherine come in and sort of facilitate a sort of strategic event. But this was that, I want to say that was before we even did the formal strategic planning.
It was. But anyway, it was an extremely educational experience for me as a baby board member. And just even in general. And I took a lot from it back to my own library.
You know, we do something a little similar with our board. And one thing I would suggest if we do this is leverage it for future board members and maybe capture those presentations and make a little, you know, cloud database for board members. So if you miss it or you want to refresh it, you can go through the presentation again.
That's a really good idea.
I think it's a great idea. I'm just concerned in the fact that we're meeting virtually right now. I don't think such a thing would be nearly as effective in a virtual setting as it would be in an in-person setting. So it might be worth waiting until we could meet in person.
The one thought I had, Jennifer, was that we might be able to have, rather than, I mean, certainly meeting in person for us as a group would be, I think, helpful, but the speakers would probably be all virtual. I don't think we would have a lot of luck in getting people to show up. But I'm just curious whether or not you think some of the, having some, you know, these vendors present, is that too much, or would you rather like spend time around SWAN strategic plan versus, I just feel like we need to sort of get a sense of what the landscape is at right now with some of these vendors and where the software's at. You know, like III has gone through a lot of changes, and while I don't list them here, I think it might be helpful to have a few folks like EBSCO to be able to kind of talk about what's going on in the, generally speaking, in the library system landscape.
I think it's a good idea. I think that it would be beneficial, and I like the idea of capturing it for future board members or those existing board members who couldn't make it. And I agree with Jennifer. I think virtually it's hard, but I don't know, we really don't know how long this is going to go on for. So that's kind of a shame as well, to keep putting it off.
I mean, things do change. We did meet virtually in person two months ago, and
Right.
then it got bad. And I mean, I'm hopeful that things will turn the other way.
Yep.
So we might not have to wait too terribly long.
Right.
Who could say? It sounds like people like it, Aaron.
Okay. I'll look at setting a date, and I'll connect with a few of these vendors as a first step and see what we can do, and then I'll maybe work with Ted and Jennifer on a sort of a overall agenda for the meeting, and then I could share that with you all if you think that works. We've had the policy discussion. I've noted the credit card spending limit where we're at, so that's an action item. And then I also included check signing resolution just to have that as for a limited period of time. If you all are okay with that, we can talk about that when we get to the action. And the information security risk and assessment analysis, we had that approved. We're moving forward with scheduling. Well, we've scheduled our first meeting with our project manager with Sikich, so that'll be coming up in the next week or two. I think we're looking at the first week of October. And I hope my write-up on the financials was helpful. I'll be keeping an eye on where we're at with the reserves and sort of that balance of where we're at. As we're getting into budget planning, we'll need to see where that's at. So just as an aside here, the budget planning, we'll be gearing up for that soon. Usually it officially will kick off after we get the audit accepted, which will be in November. What I'm doing right now is building out everything that we need as far as the tax information from all the counties. So I've been gathering all that. The big one is when I have to FOIA Cook County Treasurer, and I did FOIA and I got all that all those tax sheets back, but it does mean then doing all this manual data entry for, all those libraries. And then what I do is I have Ginny check all my data entry work. So we have that coming up. So once that's done, that part of the fee structure is set, and then I'll put out a call for any libraries that have had bond adjustments, things like that. So that gets deducted. And then we'll start talking budgets. So I'm happy to set a finance committee meeting in the next couple months so we can meet and talk things over. Ready to talk operations. We got a long operations report here. I usually like Dawn to maybe call out a few highlights here, but you can see we have a lot of consultation and site visits that are taking place. Dawn, I think you noted that William Leonard was a site visit that you and Scott were out at. I think you had a really great site visit with them.
We did. It was a really good visit. We actually did training with 5 staff. They have purchased the first time in 2 years items and are getting them on shelves and getting patrons in the library. They're all very excited. So it was really rewarding to see that library is trying to get back, having people in the library, materials circulating. And it was also just a really good reminder for me and Scott that we really need to adjust some of our training, because 98% of what many of our libraries need to do has nothing to do with cataloging at all. And we have to kind of change our vocabulary, not talk mark tags, not talk the word cataloging. It's really getting things and putting them on the shelves for checkout and making that process easier for libraries that really don't have technical staff to process items. So that was a great visit. It was really fun to be there, and we're going back. So we'll keep them learning and moving forward.
That's great to hear as a neighbor to that library.
Yes.
That they're revitalizing.
Yeah, they are.
Makes our job of serving their patrons a lot easier.
Pardon my ignorance, but where is that library?
Robbins.
Okay.
We are on track to do the automated monthly patron record removal. We had automated reports be sent out, links to a history list on September 2nd. Those will happen every 2nd of the month. And then it gives libraries approximately 6 weeks to review those patron records and decide if they want to update the record and retain it, make sure that the last activity is updated, or if they just, again, want to just let that record be removed automatically. So the first actual removal will happen October 15th. We will then, we've already started the process of getting a quote from Unique Management Service for national change of address, and we also will be asking for geolocation for any patron that has been active. We're looking at budget, but either since 1/1/2019 or 7/1/2019, and then every year we'll get those updates as needed. What we're hopeful is that Blue Cloud Analytics will have a mapping overlay soon in future releases, probably within the next year. And if we had that geolocation coding, we could then start to do mapping of where our patrons are located for service areas. So that's why we want to get that data populated. Pseudo libraries are up and running for all of the pseudo libraries ordered. We have 7 libraries, 8 pseudo libraries, drive-up windows, and lockers. And we've added some additional data about holds placed and checkouts at those library locations. And we've also sent out another kind of dashboard called a dossier in Blue Cloud Analytics that really zeroes in on activity at those second service points for the libraries. And we'll be working with that group of libraries in the next couple weeks to find out how things are moving, working for them, if there are any processing flow problems for them. I think people here, Dawn, you're the only one here with a pseudo library location for your drive-up window. How's it working?
As far as I know, it's great until at least I saw these statistics that the way I read this says we only checked out 57 things at the drive-up window from, what is it, July through August, and I know that's not true. So I was going to ask you if you have any ideas. You kind of alluded to maybe procedures are not being followed or something.
Correct. Yeah. What's happening is, and this is one of the reasons these statistics are really helpful, is what should be happening is as patrons come to the alternate location for checkout, staff should be using the circulation associated with that pseudo location to do the checkout. From the patron
Okay.
standpoint, it makes not a bit of difference. They don't notice any difference at all. But from your statistics, it does. And that's why we're trying to get libraries to check out at their drive-up window so they can collect that data.
Got it. Thank you.
Dawn and I were out on a site visit to St. Charles and Geneva, and of course, both of them have drive-up windows, so we were watching those in action. And you know, the staff member who was dealing with a library user at the drive-up window was like, "Oh, your hold is in the other spot. Let me run over there and get it." So you're still always going to kind of have that, but they seem to be just sort of going with it pretty well.
You know, I had a quick question about last activity date. Since that's kind of one of the triggers about purging the database of addresses, will changing to Aspen, if someone uses the quote unquote my account feature in Aspen and they log in, does that trigger a last activity update to the record?
It does, yes.
Okay, and is that a departure from how it works currently?
No, in Enterprise, it also triggers a last activity date in Enterprise if you log into my account, as does Blue Cloud Mobile.
Okay.
And
okay.
so do electronic resources that go over SIP, like Overdrive and Baker and Taylor. Those do as well.
So we would be capturing our true virtual users who might not step in the library, and that's great.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Resource sharing. WorldCat Discovery version 2, we're working very closely with the OCLC products team to kind of develop some changed procedures for our SWAN libraries. Their upgrade really kind of changed things dramatically for us and has made it very awkward. We also have some initial access points to WorldCat Discovery within Aspen. So we really want to make sure that our WorldCat Discovery is configured so if libraries want to allow patrons to initiate an ILL request, that is a smooth process. They can't place it for activation, but they can place it in the queue for ILL staff to review. So we want to make sure that is working as intended. Book Club reservation pilot is moving to availability to any SWAN library that wants to do that. We're having a special session October 1st to kind of share those workflows and work through the process so that people understand it. We've been having a hard time communicating to libraries and having libraries understand that they don't have to change everything. They can keep their existing procedures of how they handle book clubs right now, and they can then also move into having special kits that are shared throughout the consortium. So you can really do both, and it just takes some creative thinking on how the library would handle that. So we're hoping to have that discussion on October 1st too, so that libraries understand that. COVID-19, we're back to at least not having COVID configuration settings. We feel now that any of our system messaging, our circulation hold maps, all of that is kind of standard operating right now. So if libraries want any changes like they have in the past, you just submit a support ticket and we schedule that at the first available time. We can make those updates. We're really, circulation is pretty healthy, what I find most interesting about circulation looking at 2019 versus 2021 is that the chart of activity, while we're down about, we're at about 70%, the pattern is almost identical on a monthly basis. So that means that our patron behavior hasn't changed, just the number of patrons checking out things or the number of items being checked out is a little low still. We have seen a noticeable percentage of our holds being placed by Aspen. So we're seeing a reduced enterprise holds placement and that being replaced by Aspen. So that's to be expected, but it's nice that we can at least extrapolate that from the data.
Dawn, is there also some speculation that the browsing aspects of Aspen are such an improvement over enterprise? It may also be starting to drive up more holds.
Yeah,
just
that's
like one idea.
Yeah, that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on and kind of analyze. I know that my behavior as a patron using Aspen gives recommendations, or when you place a hold, if there are things that are currently available, it's like, while you wait, here are some titles that are similar. And these recommendations are all based on your prior checkouts and what you have rated. So I'm seeing in my account activity a lot more recommendations that it's like, yeah, that does sound interesting. I'm going to place a hold on that too. So my personal usage is seeing a change in placing more holds based on those recommendations. So we'll see if that kind of is shown across the board.
Yeah, it'll be good to track this throughout our transition to see whether or not enterprise holds versus Aspen holds, if they equal out or the Aspen holds actually grow.
Yeah. So our trends and holds continue to, I find it shockingly amazing that there are about 35,000 patrons every month that place and pick up holds. It's just such a steady number. Pre-pandemic, during pandemic, and now. Our resource sharing numbers, as far as transits, we're actually above our numbers pre-pandemic. We are transiting more through Rails and SWAN than we did prior to the pandemic. It's a 4% increase, which really you could offset by our 3 new libraries, which are about 5% of our circulation activity. But we're basically back to where we were prior to the pandemic. Scott's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in Metadata Task Force has identified some additional areas to update our subject headings and kind of do some universal changes in there. We are also adopting Homosaurus as a resource to use. CCS is also using that resource. And with CPS leadership, Rachel, why can't I remember Rachel's last name right now? Scott and Rachel will be co-chairing really a statewide networking group in this whole area. We felt that our discussions in SWAN were able to act upon, and it's great, but we felt we needed to really hear all the voices throughout Illinois to really understand differences in terminology and how people use information and do searches. So we have elevated that to a statewide networking group. Oak Lawn has rejoined as a cataloging library. And good news regarding support tickets, we did see a drop in August, which is nice. But we continue, we know we're going to get around 750 to 900 tickets a month, coming in from members to handle. We are seeing a little bit of an increase with Aspen being, our first cohort. So we've got quite a few libraries in that cohort. One of the things that Stephen and his group are working on is additional integrations with third-party vendors in things like lockers and automated material handlers. So we get those requests, often, and they really work with the library and the third-party vendor to make sure that that communication is working. The IT area is also very active in making sure that our sonic walls are replaced and working with each of the libraries that have old equipment to get those replaced before they're out of end of life. And of course, the security initiative is going to keep our IT folks pretty busy. In UX, we've got a lot of development on the Aspen side. We meet with Bywater Solutions and the Aspen developer on a weekly basis and review all of the SWAN priorities. We've been able to impact that product significantly, and there are releases about every 2 weeks. So it is a different mindset for all of us to get used to with that constant enhancement release schedule. Canopy, all the libraries that did sign up for Canopy, those are now activated. And we've got some exciting developments in web accessibility and the voluntary product accessibility template. That page is now up and available at Rails. These are initiatives that we're trying to make sure that all of the resources that we support and we get into discussions on with vendors, that they are being aware that this is important to us and it is a priority and an expectation that things will be accessible. So we're learning a lot along that progress as well. We revamped our training to make it a little bit more easy to follow and have a sequenced order for training. And probably one of the exciting things that we analyzed at the end of the last fiscal year is the EBSCO database usage. We didn't have a full complete year when decisions were made whether to resubscribe to EBSCO or not, but with a full year, we see that we do have significant access, patron access points to all of these particular databases. In fact, our a lot of the business source, the academic search premier, those actually got a lot of use. So we do know that people are using these resources for those more in-depth research questions. A breakdown by percentage of use, we see that Novelist is obviously the key database that we're relying on, but also we see a lot of other databases, and this 8% other are all of those things that we think, oh, they're not getting any use, but combined by our group purchase agreement, we're able to get those resources, and we wouldn't be able to get them if we didn't have the group contract. So that 8% represents about the same amount of access points as Consumer Reports. So we are getting all of these resources for the same cost as individually Consumer Reports and Novelist Plus would be for libraries. So it's that extra usage. Really over 50% of our database usage is from those additional resources that we're kind of getting as part of the package. Looking at a cost per access cost per use is $1.65. If we exclude Novelist Plus, it's $2.73. And we did an analysis looking at, well, what is the cost per circulation on books? Just looking at the item types of anything related to a physical book. And for items created since January 1st of 2015, that cost per use is $2.32. So just some good metrics to have. All right.
What does the board think about doing a statistics update maybe at the December quarterly on EBSCO usage, or do you feel? I'm just thinking like we had a special meeting on that. Maybe I should include a stats update at one of our next membership meetings.
That would be a great idea, in my opinion.
I agree. The way Dawn just presented it, I think would be, super helpful to some of the people that were really struggling with whether or not we should provide it in this manner.
Right.
Yeah, I appreciate, Dawn. I think Robin was the one who really did all this with Tara and your input. So I think it sort of took the approach I had when I did that stats update back in January, February. So it's definitely showing now that we have more data, because I think that's where Ted was always at, is like we need to have a full year under our belt to really kind of see what usage is at. And we're getting well past that first year. We'll have almost a year and a half by the time we hit December.
I had just a couple quick questions for the Sonic Wall end of life support. Do you guys look out at least a year in advance so libraries can budget for those replacements?
We have been providing updates for that repeatedly. So I am not positive that we have actually reached out to specific libraries before that kind of hits the floor. So that's a good thing to note, Tim.
Okay. And just a question on the diversity, equity, inclusion. Who is on that task force, just for the record?
I can get a list of that before the end of the meeting. I know that we have a portal to support that working group, and I will try and find that while Aaron is talking through the calendar.
Yeah, and I was thinking also in terms of the statewide, moving to a statewide level, I think it would be good for Dawn and Scott and I to sort of talk through a little bit of, as the recommendations are moving to the state level, I'm curious if we're also going to be seeing these recommendations a little bit more codified formally, like maybe through either the state library, or I'm not sure if it would go to ILA or if it would just be a sort of a standing recommendation from a group working on this. So. Before I move on to the calendar, I think I want to look at our agenda. We may be waiting. Next up is an update from the treasurer.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to share with you today is some information from the first Rails Consortia Committee Sustainability Working Group, which was held on August 30th. It was mostly a history lesson of the development of LSAPs. But first we reviewed the charge, then the history of LSAP development was presented to us by the State Library from their perspective. Then we reviewed the history of LSAPs through 2005 from library systems perspective. And then we reviewed going from 10 to 6 consortia in Rails. And then we talked about monies given to the 6, 2015 through the present. At which point I asked if we're trying to reallocate monies from LSAPs to something else, and if so, how much? And I was told that they're not thinking of this as an either or, but instead of what would consortia do if the library system went away. With that, we went into a brainstorming session electronically because the meeting was held electronically, and a variety of things came up, some of which you've heard batted around before. Things like a single state catalog, raising membership fees, putting the OCLC money from the state into Find More Illinois, and more LSAP consolidation, as well as many other potential ideas. That's where we left off at that meeting, and it has been decided that we will be meeting, as Erin mentioned before, on the same day that the consortia committee meets. So the next meeting is October 18th, and I will bring back notes from that.
Thanks for doing that, Dawn.
My pleasure.
Oh, I'm sure it was. Well, my reaction to, yeah, go ahead.
As a follow-up, there was a October 4th meeting at Rails about their strategic plan town hall. So I would suggest SWAN members participate heavily.
Yeah, I'm curious about all of you looking ahead at that strategic planning sessions. I put those in my calendar, not that I wanted to have SWAN attending them. I just wanted to note all the dates so I could easily share those if I get asked.
I signed up for the one on the 18th.
There did look to be a number of them. I have conflicts until I think it's the beginning of November, but I'm signed up for one.
All right, thanks, Don. It doesn't, I know it's a brand new group, but it doesn't sound like there was a whole lot of new information there.
No, a lot of reiteration of old ideas.
Yeah. Cool. Are you ready to talk about the calendar?
Sure. At least in the calendar where we're at, I wanted to note that Wednesday, September 15th was the application for the LSAP funding. I did submit that and have just a couple questions from Ann Slaughter that I'll respond to later today. One of which in this application, just to make that clear to you all, is that the way the grant is now, as it's been restructured, they will deduct certain services that are provided to the consortia. So for example, if we continue to have Rails do the accounting services, that would be deducted from our amount. But we've transitioned nearly everything over. The one thing that was left that we would be asking for is delivery to SWAN headquarters. So in looking at that, we could cancel that, but I will say that, while it is nice to be able to request things and have them come to SWAN headquarters, and we do utilize delivery also for some of the central purchasing that we've been experimenting with, we do get a number of items that are routed to us by the delivery hubs where they just don't know what to do with it, and they're looking for SWAN staff to resolve the questions on the labeling, what this is that's going out. So I put in the application that we would move from 5 days to only 2 days a week, and got a quote from Ann on roughly what that number would be. I don't remember it, but I can tell you what that looks like. Really just to make sure that, one, we're helping SWAN member libraries through correcting mislabeled or confusing things that were routed, and also to maintain that sort of connection, at least through delivery, I think will be helpful for the long term. But the question from Ann was, do we want to move down from 5 days to 2 days sooner rather than later? So I'll work that out with Ann, but at least for the application, I noted for July 1 next year, we'd like to move to 5 days to 2 days.
Erin, just out of curiosity, how many items do you get in, say, a week's time that are confusing?
We probably get about 3 to 4 a week that are mislabeled, or there are ILLs that need to go outside of SWAN, so we relabel and contact the libraries and do all of that. Yeah. So if we weren't getting those would kind of just, lay in limbo. Yeah.
But 2 days a week should be completely sufficient, I would think, for that volume.
At least resolving it, it prevents the items from just hanging around or bouncing back and forth. So we can resolve it because we have access to the software and look up everything and see why did this arrive. Dawn Tortorella, I do know that you've also said you've been trying to work out the kinks on the kits being lent out from book clubs, right?
Yes. The pilot libraries have done just a phenomenal job at packaging these kits into like consistent bags and have it's the bag is actually barcoded, not the individual items. So they need to be retained in the bag, and they're beautiful bags, and we don't want them getting all dirty and worn by going through transit. So they fit within a bin, and we've worked out with Rails. We will put it in a bin, we will zip tie the bin, we will label the bin. The whole bin goes kit and caboodle to the destination. And every single time we have tried this, they have taken the things out of the bin. So we don't know why. We've taken pictures. Mark has been extremely helpful in trying to get this corrected. So I'm sure it's going to be corrected. But it's just, there's a lot of people that, process these items, and they've been taught for years, open every bin. So we understand the exception processing just creates problems for everybody, but it'll get there.
I wonder, do those bins come in a different color?
They don't, and we've thought of color coding things, but then you've got to keep track of the color coded bins, and it, yeah. But we might
I
have
was
to
just
go
thinking,
that route.
then you could say, don't open red bins.
Yeah.
I put in our meeting chat a link to the support page where you can see these book club, the way the kits are packaged. I think it's very helpful, at least to sort of see in reality like what it looks like, and really it's a really nice job. Okay, you've got the list now.
Yeah, and Tim, I got this from Scott, and we will get this as a diversity, equity, and inclusion task force on the support site because it is not there and it should be. So we will add that. So thank you.
Yeah, I would also just suggest if there's documentation that highlights their activity and the changes to subject headings or whatever word is the right description, that could also be available somewhere on SWAN's website.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Tim, that's why I was thinking that if we move to the state level, it would be great to then to have like recommended approaches be like included at a possibly state level.
All right, are we ready to keep going?
I'm ready.
Okay. Okay, next up, authority to pay bills. So Don Bussey and I love to sign hundreds of checks at a single sitting. However, sadly, there is an action item to authorize what we had previously been doing during the pandemic, which is to allow the executive director to sign all checks and payments, and then they use a stamp for that second signature. I believe that's Dawn's stamp, signature on the stamp.
Yes.
We're going to go ahead, just to be on the safe side, we're going to extend that through February of 2022 because, COVID. So can I have a motion to approve the authority to pay bills for September 2021 through February 2022?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Can I have a roll call, please?
Sure. Blazik,
Yes.
Bo Davis,
Yes.
Bussey,
Yes.
Cottrell,
Yes.
Gallardo absent, Jarzemski,
Yes.
Jenkins.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Don Bussey gave a very emphatic yes. You will notice that. All right, thanks everybody. Next up, we have an action item to approve the purchase limit for the SWAN organization credit card. The SWAN credit card limit is currently a very low $20,000, and Aaron, you're looking to raise it by $5,000.
Correct.
$25,000. Okay. Do you have any commentary on that before we? Put it out there?
No, just nudging that up a little bit. I don't want to go overboard with it, but it is one of the things we're seeing more and more of our charges, particularly from IT, with our cloud infrastructure. If you're okay with these kind of incremental bumps, I'll bring those to you from time to time. I don't want to ask for too much.
No, I think it's reasonable, Aaron. That's a lower credit limit than my little library has. So,
Okay.
I mean, that seems low to me. But if it's what you need, then that's perfect. Any other questions on that? Okay.
I just had a quick question just from my understanding, and I always think of these things, if an auditor came in and saw this, would they say it passes transparency, fraud, and segregation of duty muster? So do we have a list of people that are authorized to make credit card transactions, and is there a limit intra-board meetings where checks are approved in terms of how much someone may charge on a credit card?
The overall limit is for the cards that we have issued. So right now there's 4 cards. The one that has the most activity is the one that's in Steven Schlewitt's name, which is the IT group. So that's where we're seeing a lot of like equipment purchases and a lot of activity you'll see with Microsoft, and the lines that you'll see in the revenue and expense in the check register are noting that, Tim. But I don't believe that there's limits on the cards individually. I do have alerts that come up as far as activity that I see occurring on all the cards. So there are, from time to time, I will reach out very quickly, and this happened recently on a Friday, and I had to reach out to Steven personally and said, did you authorize this? And he was like, I'm sorry, I had to make an emergency purchase for a replacement firewall that we had to get to a library. So I didn't let you know, but Dawn had authorized Steven to go ahead with that. So we do keep a close eye on that. And then also any, even though we're using the stamp, all those authorizations have to go to Dawn Bussey anyway for review and approval. So while
Right.
as Ted noted, Dawn's off signing the checks, but she still has to review everything that we're sending her way.
Right. And from a checks and balances perspective, Tim, every month I get a copy of every single charge, and then I get an explanatory sheet from every authorized user, and I compare those two, and I authorize them before they pay the bill. So there is a series of checks and balances between Dawn, Aaron, and I every month on the credit card bills.
That's great. So I just was trying to hone in on who is an authorized user of the credit cards within SWAN.
Dawn, Aaron, Ginny, Steven, and that's it, right?
That's it.
Okay, great. I just think that's just something to keep an eye out in case the auditors ever want you to beef that up, because we've had to take some steps on that with Lauterbach and Amman looking at our processes. And one of the steps we took is we do include our credit card bill in our financials for the entire board, just so they can look at the list of charges instead of just seeing, oh, we made a $20,000 payment to Chase. We see the breakdown, and any board member can see that.
I mean, if they want us to do that, that'd be easy enough to do. But
No,
we'll see
I'm
what,
just suggesting that an area that whoever your auditor is, they may, whatever, everyone's got their own emphasis when they go through their audit process. We would just have to beef ours up a bit.
Yeah, but we do have that breakdown in the register. So the first bank card payment does list out all the, the itemized expenses. So if you looked at like exhibit page 15 and 16. So it didn't used to be that way. We just had one big payment, and then with this move to Lauterbach doing all this, they are including that breakdown. So.
And if I may say, Tim, there are limits on each one of the 4 of us.
Thanks for
There is a
clarifying,
credit
Jenny.
card. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Yep.
Again, I never suspect anything wrong. I just like to make sure we have good policies in place.
Being careful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Particularly with the new auditor. You're absolutely right. Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the purchase limit for the SWAN organization credit card from the existing limit of 20,000 to a new limit of 25,000?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
A roll call, please.
Lasik,
Yes.
Bo Davis,
Yes.
Bussey,
Yes.
Cottrell,
Yes.
Gallardo absent, Jarzemski,
Yes.
and Jenkins.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything else? Okay, no good stories. All right, it is 10:53 a.m. and I will adjourn this meeting. And thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yes.